Hello, welcome everyone. Today I want to check out SkyNet, a new free reverb plugin, which has a very peculiar mix of things that I find cool and things that I don't find cool. I mean it, it's really weird. Usually, when a plugin developer implements something in a weird way, then all the other stuff is weird as well. But here there is a very interesting mix. For example, fully resizable, which is super cool. So you might think to yourself, okay, the developer has figured it out completely. But then again, the knobs have radial drag. It's not vertical drag, it's not horizontal drag, and it's also not diagonal drag. No, it is radial drag. And that really makes me think, what? And I cannot even change it. But on the other hand, it's also a good opportunity to just give radial drag another chance. I mean, we are all used to vertical drag, I guess, and most people like it most. I have talked to a few people who would say that they don't like vertical drag most, but I think that's just about the same as if you want to ask a lot of people if they like dark mode or light mode more in a browser. And most people will just say dark mode, and some people will just say bright mode. But for those few who say bright mode, it's not worth it to make a bright web page, or at least not much. Like, you can do it if you have some spare time, but the dark mode should be the default setting. Yeah, and that's also something good about this plugin, because it is apparently dark, so that's a good thing again. And then there is a bad thing again, because the volume is not the wet volume, but just the overall volume, so you cannot really use the dry-wet mix either. So these two parameters basically don't exist, just the decay and this one. That's why I put an FX layer here, so that I can gain the reverb and the dry signal independently from each other. Yeah. But then there is a good thing about this effect again, which is that it sounds just really good. For example, here on the piano, it sounds like this. Which I find pretty cool. Especially in the context of the music, it really adds some ambience to everything.
Seems like our time has come. We'll be.
So I like it a lot. Now let's test something else about the workflow. Let's say I have found a bounce that I really like. Close the plugin, open it again. Okay, so that was expected. It does not remember the bounds that have been defined, because that's a mistake that developers often do. Everyone tries to make a good resizable interfaces, no matter if it's just aspect ratio or all, but then they forget to save the state, which is I don't know, which kind of defies the purpose, because I don't want to keep on dragging this out whenever I have closed the window for a little moment. But you know, that makes this plugin so peculiar. It is just in some ways really good, and then in some ways not so good again. Anyway, let's try it on the snare. Now, the snare actually consists of a fundamental note snare and a high-end snare. And I think it would make sense to try this on the clap, which is like the high end of the snare. Okay, so what was the name of this thing? Can I just type in reverb? No, I can't. Then I can probably just select the category of it. Oh, the category has not been programmed into the plugin, or else it would show up. Okay, wait, wasn't it something like star or so? No, it was not. Okay, I'm just bad with names, you know. But that shouldn't hold me back now. So I just go look for it. SkyNet, right? It's not space, it's sky. So sky. Okay, I remember sky because it's in the air, and air is reverb. Nice. Okay, so we have SkyNet here. Now let's play that back with 100% mix. First of all, let me make a default preset where these two are just on 100% because I don't want to change them ever. Save as default. And then let's start. Okay, very long decay. Except when I go to 0%, of course, then it's a bit shorter, but it's not really extremely short. So it could be too much for a snare, except if we make it gated artificially. I gotta say something, though, about the radial drag thing. You know, I generally like vertical drag more, because I'm just used to it. But one thing that is cool about radial drag is that you get more precision by going away from the knob. And now when I'm moving super precisely. Only problem is, if the thing was already here, then this wouldn't work anymore. And that's some of the advantage of vertical drag, because there you have the ability, if you are programming it, to let the cursor disappear whenever you're dragging something. That's actually something that happens in my plugins, or at least in the newer ones of those, so that when you are close to the edge, you can always move it, even if you hold shift for sensitive drag, so you never get in the way of the edge of the screen, which I consider to be kind of an advanced thing. I don't even see it in a lot of commercial plugins, but Bitwig also has it, for example. So it's really cool. And that's not a thing in radial drag. So even though I do say I see the advantage of radial drag, I would still say vertical drag is just ahead of it, because you can do these things with it. Okay, now let's try to find a setting for this snare. I like it when it goes a bit more towards SkyNet 2. SkyNet 2 has a bit more of an audible delay network. You know, you can hear the individual delays, but also when you're mixing it with SkyNet 1 a bit, then it has this thumpy character, this whoosh, 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 because it's a bit of a darker sound. Now let's add the layer so that I can mix it with dry nicely. And now the next thing that I want to do is actually make it a bit more gated. And gladly we are on a track that has MIDI input, so I can just use my plugin ADSR for that. Nice. Now I get a really nice, smooth and gentle roll off to this reverb, and it doesn't even sound like a reverb anymore at this point.
Seems like our time has come. be consumed by the sun. Just want you to take my hand. Let us walk on our hands. Let me see you one last time.
Okay, let's go. I'm very happy with what it did to the snare. Added some depth, but didn't get in the way too much or at all. Now let's test it on this rising acid arp. It rises up. And then it goes down again at the end. That's it. That's the purpose of this thing. It kinda, you know, builds up the tension for this part. Now, things like that can often benefit from some tasty reverb. And this time I remembered that the name was SkyNet. Wait, why do I not hear what's going on? Huh? That's weird. Okay, I deactivated the plugin and then activated it again. So apparently there is a bug where it sometimes doesn't have sound, but if you just deactivate it and activate it again, then it has sound again. So it's not much of a problem. And you can see it, you know, every time I have to reopen it, I have to do this again. So that's exactly why I think that it's objectively not a good idea to not save the state of resizing a plugin when resizing is a feature of a plugin. So you really have to make a decision when you're a developer. Do you want the plugin to be resizable? Then also you have the responsibility to make it right, or just don't let it be resizable and no one will ever complain. That's kind of the thing. But I do want to encourage everyone to make things resizable, especially, you know, like this, where you don't even have to keep the aspect ratio to have it fit to your favorite style. I mean, look at this. This looks cool. This looks also cool. And this looks cool. That's why I like it to be fully resizable. Nice. I like how it kind of adds something to this fade where it gets back to the darkness. Now let's add the layer. I want to check out what it does in the stereo field. Because you gotta be careful with this plugin a little bit. It does not add width on its own, I think. See, when I make the input signal mono and then run the plugin again, then the outcome will not be stereo. And that's a bit confusing for some people, I think, because you often expect a reverb to add some stereo width. But this thing is modeled after a guitar pedal, and you know how guitar pedals are. A lot of them output mono, which I always find pretty awful. I mean, in some cases it's kind of nice because it kind of forces you to really think what kind of sound do you want, and not just, it is so wide and that's why it's cool. You know what I mean? That can fool you sometimes. But just that they don't even have the option to make some of the things stereo that they are working with, I don't like that. And it doesn't fit to the digital workflow a lot. In this case, I think it's pretty cool, but then you have to keep in mind to add the stereo shaping plugin afterwards. Okay, that's not enough control for me. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that it's kind of exaggerated now. You know, you couldn't run this in solo because it's just way too much side. But it's just an effect that is not even meant to stay in the signal when you are truncate it down to mono. It is just the little bit of extra thing that you get when you are listening to something in stereo. And I'm fine with it.
Let me see you one last time. Before our eyes get blind. Now it's time to say goodbye.
Oh, I just had a cool idea about this. A really cool idea. Because it kinda clashes with the vocals.
This is just a let me see you one last time.
So this is a great opportunity to just use Soothe 2's sidechain feature to duck the sidey SkyNet reverb on incoming vocals. Let me quickly check. Where do I have to put this? Oh, in the group, yes. But not on everything. It should only be on the triggered by the dry signal. So the output of the FX layer's dry lane. Yeah. Okay. So where was I? Okay, Soothe. So I gotta select the vocals G master, FX chains dry post. Great. This should do the trick.
Let me see you one last time. Before our eyes get blind. Now it's time to say goodbye. This is just a way of life.
It's really hard to tell if it's a good choice to use Soothe in this instance, because I have to turn up to the max to even hear anything.
Let me see you one last time.
Okay, let's try something different then. Let's try Track Spacer, because Track Spacer is a more audible effect. And usually I would go for Soothe with everything, but when Soothe is not the right fit, then Track Spacer is usually the answer to that. Okay, Vox G master, chain dry post.
Let me see you one last time. Before our eyes get blind. Now it's time to say goodbye. This is just the way of life. Let me see you one last time. Before our eyes get blind.
Yeah. Okay, as I thought, track spacer here now, because it is less of a subtle effect, it's actually drastical enough for what I try to do.
Let me see you one last time. Before our eyes get blind. Now it's time to say goodbye. This is just the way of life.
Cool. Let's try one other thing before this video is at the end. There is this copy of the break, you know, this break. And the purpose of this copy is to just be fully distorted. And it kind of adds some background sizzle to everything if you listen closely. And now that's also something where it can be good to just test a reverb on. Sometimes, not always, because it can kind of remove the texture of the sound when you are going too hard with reverbs on such sounds. And you know, the whole textural aspect is the interesting part about it. Usually I would prefer to go on it with a pitch shifter, but it's already so high-endish. So let's try this and let's go. Okay, let's actually try this because I like that it adds so much depth to the sound. So we still let the dry signal handle the high end, but we just add a little bit more body. That could work. FX layer, SkyNet. Maybe we could even then, you know, remove the body from this thing a bit more. So we just let the other track handle the body entirely. I don't know. Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, I like that. You know, you might say that it doesn't make a difference because it's so low in volume in the mix, but to me, these are just the kind of details that, you know, really add the depth to the sound. Some people, what I always read on Facebook, on scammy Facebook posts, where some mixing engineers are like, oh, you have to pay me for my mixing course, that's going to level up your mixing skills, blah blah blah. They often make posts that read like, you should only make bold decisions. No one cares for the details. The listener doesn't hear if you use compressor A or compressor B. They only hear if you have a sweet vocal tag. And I'm like, okay, that might be true, but I hear if I used compressor A or compressor B, and I hear if there is depth in the pad or not. And the reason why I hear that is because I can solo and mute the tracks in my project, and when the music just sounds better when something is enabled, then I will not disable it, of course. So we should really not, when we are making music, not too much argue with the listener, because the listener just wants to have pleasant music. The listener doesn't even have to know what a compressor is, but they surely need music that has compression on it. Just an example for why this whole narrative makes no sense, in my opinion. Okay, I said that I only wanted to try one other thing, but actually I want to try another thing because I feel like it, and there is this gazing pad. And it's already super reverberant, but I want to add even more reverb because that's just the thing that I want to do. Okay, I like that. That was pretty loud, but I liked it. So let's just add the layer now. Layer for SkyNet. Okay, let's go. Actually, I want to take this opportunity to take this a little bit further. I want to try something now. I want to try if phase distortion sounds good on this signal. Okay, not quite. Then I need to try a bit harder. Okay, I have an idea. The reason why phase distortion currently doesn't sound good because the signal is too complex. So what I could do about is I could just load up an instance of supermodal and set it to key tracking, because that's basically all that I use supermodal for, is setting it to key tracking and then doing things with it. So this thing has MIDI input. It's polyphonic, but it doesn't matter. pass. Okay, so now I already have a signal that sounds more like it kinda is shaped towards certain little tone. And now I will just add riff filter light on top of that. Also in bandpass. And also key tracked. Okay, that should do the trick. Now I can actually use phase distortion. Okay, kinda ugly on some notes, but not gonna lie, but you know, we can try. I think it has something to do with some of these notes just being really high. This whole phase distortion thing works better when the notes are not so far away from each other. So let's take it away again. Instead, we can just take a normal saturator. Okay, I like that. Let's try this. Sweet. Now it really makes sense that these higher notes sound different than the lower ones with the reverb, because now they kind of just poke out of the nothingness at these moments, which makes a lot of sense with the rest of the music and adds an interesting key track dynamic to it. Now, I think that's enough for this little video in which we explored SkyNet. I think there is a lot of potential to just improve the workflow of SkyNet, namely the thing with the resizing, that it saves the state, and that it should be vertical drag, or at least an option to switch between vertical drag and radial drag. A wet gain parameter so that these two are actually usable at all. And yeah, I do like that the parameters are smooth. You can move them fast and they will not cause crackling sounds and stuff like that. But that would really bring the things that I mentioned would really bring this plugin to the next level. But it's already very capable and usable, and I can, as you can see, I can throw it on nearly any track and it will always do something that I can use in some way, and that's pretty cool and isn't always the case actually.